Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Sunday, November 17th. I'm wrapping up a video today. And I just wanted to start my next video. I had some thoughts and meditation today. So if you look at our origin story, right, the story that the beast gives us for our belief system, there's two, at least in America, there's two dominant stories. And then globally, there's usually two dominant stories, one of people's religion and one of modern science, right? And both are completely fraudulent. They're not close to the real truth, right? And so, either biologically or, scientifically or spiritually, like the people who control the system have been perpetrating this fraud. So, they won't tell you where you came from. You don't have any sense of how you were created, either as a spiritual being and your history of your human evolution and what's happened to you, where you come from as a species. Then your fundamental building block about the nature of your existence is already been compromised, right? Like the original question, who am I, where did I come from, why am I here? These are the questions that would be answered, at least in part, by your history of your race and the history of the planet, the history of your species, right? And the history of the rest of the creatures on Earth, but specifically human beings. Like, where do we begin? What's our history? And on a spiritual level, that as well. So there's the physical, biological history of your species, and then there's the spiritual history of your species. So let's start with science. So, there's, of course, the Big Bang Theory, which I guess is partly a spiritual story, but it's an inconclusive theory that has no real relevance in terms of, like, it's just a theory that has very little scientific data to back it. But in terms of our species, the idea is that we started off as apes. Before that, we started off as something else. The life first emerged from the oceans, very simplistic life, emerged from the waters onto the earth. And then we went through a various series of biological evolutionary steps. Okay, so this is what it says on the internet. The earliest known ancestor of humans is the microscopic sea creature Saccharidus, which lived around 450 million years ago. Was a durosome. Saccharidus was a durosome, a category of animals that includes vertebrates or backbone animals. It had a number of characteristics that are shared by many of its descendants, including humans. And it goes through the various elements, right? And so this original sea creature eventually made it up onto land and then went through various evolutionary steps into where we are, what we are today. And our most recent ancestor was, in terms of non-human, was the ape, right? Then we went through various human-ape type of evolutionary steps to eventually the Neanderthal man, who gave way to the Cro-Magnon man, right? So that's the Darwinian official scientific belief about human beings. And so there was this, simplistic life form, amoeba-like life forms that eventually became human beings and other, mammals and things, all these shared ancestors that we all have, right? And so that's the idea, that these creatures started to adapt and evolve over millions of years and become more sophisticated, more intelligent. And so some of our ancestors, the apes, are still here. Then some of them stayed as apes and some have evolved into human beings. And there were stages of evolution between the ape and the human being, which is, well documented by those charts of evolution, right? Where apes became, more like human beings, but still half ape, half human being, these various, creatures. So that the chimpanzee and these great apes exist, chimpanzee, orangutan, and the gorilla, and the gibbon, these these tailless monkeys, right, that exist that are somehow related to us, and they have, we share a lot of genetic material, especially with the chimpanzee. We're supposed to share 98% of our genetics with the chimpanzee. But, like, even with that, I mean, the story's just horseshit, but there's lots of reasons for it. There's been evidence to the contrary, where they have found skeletons of human beings that trace back millions of years, like skeletons that have been embedded in marble and things like this. Of course, there's the giants that have been talked about in various places, and then the sky people that are in all these cultures, and ancient paintings of extraterrestrials, and these kind of and not only that, but technologically advanced civilizations that built the pyramids and things like this, right? That just squashed that story, because we've been progressively evolving technologically since 200,000 years ago. That's the story, and that just isn't the case. There's archaeological evidence that that's not true, and there is the fused chromosome, the second and the third chromosome, that are fused together that wouldn't happen naturally, which suggests there's some sort of genetic manipulation, like there was that humans were made from apes, some kind of higher developed advanced civilization made slaves out of chimpanzees or something like that. But there's just all this evidence, right? And the story's just goofy. There is some evolution, right? That you see that takes a long time. Like there's lizards that don't have arms anymore, but they have nubs where their arms used to be, but they look just like snakes. You think they're armless, they're limbless lizards that used to be snakes, and there's things like that. There's evolutionary type of situation. You think about all this different species of snakes, right? All the different types of species of cats, different kinds of lions and tigers, and these things that all share a common ancestor. They've evolved to have different traits, right? But if you understand, when there's a higher developed being that manipulates genetics, like just by different breeds, by breeding different characteristics, by keeping different characteristics. So all of the chickens that we have, and if you go to order chickens on mychicken.com or one of these hatcheries, there's these various hatcheries where you can buy chickens, and you see there's hundreds of breeds, right? And we don't have all of them here, and they all originate from a jungle fowl that exists in India. The origin of the chicken, if you look at the jungle fowl, it looks like a number of chickens, like the Rhode Island red. If you look at like a Rhode Island red and this jungle fowl is much smaller, but they have some characteristics and similarities. But there are now so many different types of chickens with all these various characteristics. It's quite extraordinary. And even more so with dogs and cows and things like that. The cow has the original ancestors that were domesticated, and because human beings wanted different traits and characteristics and moved these animals in different places, and they adapted to those places, the different types of species are extraordinary, like the amounts of different kinds of cats and dogs and things like this. It's just these domesticated animals, and they all came from, the dogs came from either a wolf or a fox, depending on the species, and these various types of dogs that were domesticated. And they were a couple of different kinds of foxes and the various types of, dogs, and, the wild dogs and wolves and things like this. But what human beings have created through just selective breeding is extraordinary in short periods of time, right? In terms of these breeds. And so you understand that when there's a higher developed being involved that is manipulating genetics just on a breeding level, selective breeding, never mind actually manipulating genetics, which is what human beings are into now, there can be dramatic deviations in a species. And human beings are now doing these things, which leads us to believe, well, were they done to us, right? You understand this? If they were done to what we're doing now, what human beings have the capability of doing now, would easily have been done to us. And with the evidence, the chromosomal evidence, the fusing of the chromosomes and these other things, it's almost guaranteed that it was, right, to whatever extent. It may be as recent of like as 5,000 years ago. Charles Darwin was born in the late 1800s or what, early 1800s. So you have it's a kind of a 200-year-old theory that has, really no merit. And that's what the majority of people believe, at least in terms of their scientific knowledge of the origin of our species. On a spiritual level, for most of us, we grew up with the Christian model from the book of Genesis. God created the heaven and the earth in, whatever, 7 days, this kind of bullshit thing that happened. Because, the story of, Adam and Eve and these other stories, they're just goofy. Like they're, primitive people with lack of, worldly knowledge that we possess today and scientific equipment and understanding. These stories exist in tribes all over the place. Tribal people, that there is some kind of story. And it's not, maybe it's a simplistic way of understanding the, the origin of the species, but it's certainly not a spiritual one, right? And so the idea of God in the creation story, here, I'm just going to read you the Genesis story here. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was formless, void, and darkness covered the face of the depth, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome of mist of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made a dome and separated the waters that were under the sky, or under the dome, from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. So this was the firmament, right? This is like, this is why people believe in the firmament in the flat earth thing. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the waters on the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters were gathered together. He called seas, and God saw that it was good. So then, all these other things, right? Now, first of all, this implies that God spoke English. Of course, the Bible was written in other languages, and English didn't exist then. Neither did language, because God didn't need to talk. God doesn't have vocal cords. God used thought to create everything, right? He didn't say anything. He thought these things. And he didn't think them in English because English wasn't available. But this is just a primitive story of people who knew nothing about pretty much anything. And these, this is how these creation stories are. Tribal creation stories with limited information. And, let's say there were giants, right? They're called Nephilim in the Bible. There's giant stories in Native American cultures, Aboriginal cultures, and there is, all these historic giant type things, right? And so let's say there were giants. So at some point, giants disappeared, but there's still folklore about them, things like this, right? But let's say, and there's some evidence of giants now in people. You see these giant people who are, 8 feet tall, 7 feet tall. I mean, there's something going on there, right? Just like you see with, short people, tiny people. The little people that exist. There's various types of little people that exist, and there's, types of like giant big people. People who are above certain like 6'8" or 6'9", whatever it is, right? So there's whatever it is there. It's in our genetic makeup, but it's an anomaly. It's something that happens, where you have a couple of parents who are 5'8", and they have a son or daughter who's 7'5", and then two siblings that are similar to the parents, right? But then there's these, ones that aren't. But anyways, what I'm saying here is that let's say there's giants 200 years ago, they disappeared. significantly, right? 300 years, whenever it was, 500 years ago. They've been pretty much wiped out of our existence, and if you believe in them, you're silly, and they're just, wives' tales and these stories that exist from Aboriginal cultures, but they exist in all of them, right? And so it doesn't take much time for people to forget about something. Let's say there was aliens, there was extraterrestrials 500 years ago on this planet that were interacting with people. People would look up in the sky and they would see spaceships and shit like that, right? 1,000 years ago, whatever it was, right? And so that was something that everyone just knew about. And then they all disappeared, and then they became sort of just a myth. Of course, there's evidence that whatever it is, the evidence of higher developed beings, technologically advanced beings that built the pyramids and other things. But even with all of the stuff that we have now, right? Let's say our civilization collapsed, all the things we have. Well, it only takes 10,000 years for everything to break down, like even our computer chips, our plastic bags. They say plastic, it takes 10,000 years for it to biodegrade. But cement, it takes 100 years for it starts to unbond, right? Cement is a bonding of, sand and limestone and these things, right? There's you have these cement paste that you turn into, rock-like substance. And, they have various forms of concrete and whatever you use to make something, like this. It has a bonding life where it is bonding together for 100 years, and then the bonds start to weaken. So you see this with cities that are over 100 years old. You see all these ancient civilizations, these ancient cities starting to fall apart. And so ancient ruins, they don't last, 1,000 years. Like, how many castles are out there? The pyramids are kind of an exception. Like they're 5,000 years old or whatever. But there isn't much of the architecture and things that are available. All of our buildings and cities, plus nature takes over. Like we're fighting against nature even in cities. In cracks in the road and in our sidewalks, you see plant life trying to grow through it, right? And people have to, put weed killer on it or do something to stop that from happening. But if all the people disappeared from a city, it takes 50 years for nature to reclaim that city and turn it into a natural environment. Of course, there's floods and things like this in ancient ruins under the sea, which would indicate there was once land there, and somehow the waters rose, and the waters, there was polar ice cap melting because there's ice ages. And when the ice age is there, a lot of the ocean water is now in glacial form and frozen. And it covers more of the northern and southern part of the world. And when that happens, like from Florida down to South America, there was a land bridge. And now it's just a series and chain of islands and, low-lying places, right? But you can trace it that there used to be land all the way down to, South America, and America was connected through the Caribbean islands and these things. There was a land bridge. And so there's all these things, right, that change and disappear. And, the archaeological finds that people have are mostly from 5,000 years ago and nothing even before that. And when somebody discovers something that doesn't fit with the narrative, whether it be the biblical narrative or it doesn't fit with the Darwinian scientific theory, it's just shelved, right? Like they had those, if you ever saw Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first movie, there's this Ark of the Covenant they're looking for. And when they open it up, these demons come out, or whatever it is, they energetic beings, and they just melt everybody, all the Nazis, if your eyes are open. But if you close your eyes, you're safe. And they take the bureaucrats take this very dangerous artifact, and they shelve it in this giant warehouse where there's thousands of things. All these things are there. And so, whatever doesn't fit with the narrative that you've been given is shelved, right? So understanding that these two narratives, the biblical narrative of the book of Genesis and the scientific narrative of human evolution, is complete horseshit. It doesn't exist. We have no idea There's all this evidence to support different narratives, but we have very little knowledge of what that is. But there are people that do. There are people that have had this knowledge. It's talked about in Freemasonry and these other places, where there are people who chose to exclude whatever the real knowledge that they have, whatever the accurate knowledge that they have, from the rest of the people. And so there's been a controlling system here for thousands of years, religiously. Like, you have religious leaders who decide to edit the Bible. They decide to take things out that were in it, the Old Testament, the New Testament, Jesus' story, change Jesus' story and say that he was the only Son of God, and the only way that you could get to heaven, which is a creation of their own. There is etheric worlds. There's etheric, universe, an energetic universe where, beyond non-biological life exists, right? The life of a soul exists in a totally different realm of existence. And your soul exists in that realm whilst also being in this human, simulation. And, it's kind of hard to understand or even imagine. But you have a soul, an energetic being that doesn't need food and water and these things. It exists without the, physical, the physical limitations, but it exists in that universe, in that, that realm of existence, whilst also existing in the physical realm. So the idea of a heaven, your soul is in heaven right now. Your soul is existing in both places, right? Like, let's say you're playing a video game and you have an avatar, and your consciousness goes into that creature through the controllers and through your visual field, and virtual reality even more so, and you exist in that realm while you're really existing in a physical body, right? Just like when you dream, you're asleep, your physical body's not active, your brain is in a different, kind of a different state, and then you enter into the dream world, right? Which is quite, if you think about all the types of different dreams you've had, which involve flying or being underwater or being out in space or any number of things, right? And so there's all these various experiences and levels of consciousness, which the religions don't want you to know anything about, right? Because they want to be the religions are material organizations that get your money and get your, whatever it is. They tell you kind of a little bit of truth that there is, divinity, there is a God, but the God that they describe is one that they've copyrighted and trademarked, and it's imaginary, just like Santa Claus. It doesn't exist in, reality. I mean, there was a Santa Claus at one time, but the Santa Claus that you grew up with is not a real person. And it's very similar to God, who's not a person at all. God is an essence, is an energy. It's a field of creative energies, and love being the feeling that you feel in your heart when you are connected with God, right? It's the essence of all creation. So they've gone to extraordinary lengths to deprive you of any real knowledge that they possess, the people who control the system. I mean, this has gone on globally, that there's a group of people that have access to knowledge that we don't have. And you can see that it's still, you can see it, that this is confirmed. I mean, there's lots of evidence, that I've described here that confirms it, because there's classified information that the so-called leaders of our country, and every country has this. There's secret information. Like, for example, Freemasons, they have secret knowledge that as you go through the different degrees, and there's 33 degrees, is it? 33 degrees, third degree Freemason, that they have access to information that you don't have in the beginning. As a neophyte, as an entry-level person, right? And it's within these religious structure. The Vatican has this library, this library that was referenced in the one of the Dan Brown books and movies. This epic library filled with secret information that's excluded, ancient texts and things like this, right? That's excluded from the average person. That there is secret hidden knowledge that the government gets, like when they classify something. is, information that they don't think you can handle. So it's built into the system right now. There's information that they won't tell you. There's documentation about aliens or whatever it is, or RFK Jr. RFK, JFK and RFK, the original guys who were murdered, right? Like their assassination. And that's fairly recent. That happened in 1960. They declassified information recently about Operation Ajax that happened in the 60s, where this guy Mossadegh was destroyed. The Shah was put in Iran, right? That's some other country. But they know about it there, right? They knew what happened. They lived through it. But in America, you weren't privy to this information until fairly recently, when the FBI finally admitted to something that, most people, at least some people, knew about, right? When the atomic bomb was being built, there was supposed to be 500,000 people or so that had knowledge of something going on. They had part knowledge of it. Of course, there was only a few people who knew exactly what was going on. And lots of people were excluded from that information, right? Because it was secret, top secret, right? That means you can't have access to it. And all these intelligence communities that exist in every developed country around the world has access to information. They control information, and they have an advantage over you because they have information you don't have access to, right? Insider trading. Business people that have access to information that can make them wealthy, as opposed to everybody else who is a part of that economic system who's not privy to that information. That's why people keep secrets, right? But people, keep their, whatever it is, secret. The whole idea of the QAnon movement was that there was somebody in the Q, there's this guy, that people called Q, who had access to Q level clearance, the highest clearance in the government, and had access to all this secret information and a secret plan that Donald Trump was somehow involved in taking over the deep state. And this person decided to divulge this information anonymously while the intelligence community of people that control this stuff sat back and watched it happen. And that you were supposed to be involved in some way because you had special skills and you'd get your little amateur detective shit out of your cereal box and little, like your little detective kit, and you would participate because Q needed you. You were there. Like this is like some kind of childish fucking, this is a story that they would tell children, right? That, hey, you can be a part of this, Johnny. Hey, Johnny, you get your junior detective equipment out there and you help us solve the crime. We can't do it, so we're enlisting a 12-year-old boy because 12-year-old children because we can't do it on our own. We can't take down the deep state on our own. We need your help, right? I mean, it was really stupid. But people bought into this, right? Because there's secret knowledge. Like we know there's secret knowledge. Top secret documents where they were trying to jail Trump for mishandling his secret documents and Hillary Clinton and, all this stuff, classified information. And it's a crime and treasonous, and people get upset when people divulge this secret documentation, that there's whistleblowers. These guys are controlled like Snowden and Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning, these people. But, they're charged with treason if they take classified information and they tell it to the world. You don't divulge our secrets because our secrets give us an advantage. And so they've been fucking lying to you forever, right? The people that control the system, and lying to themselves or whatever it is. And they are not giving you an accurate story. And so if they've been doing this, if they have that much control over, your history, over the knowledge that just, ordinary day-to-day knowledge and the runnings of the government and the world and whatever happened with COVID, like COVID. There's obviously people who know the truth about that, and they're not telling you the truth, and that affected people worldwide. Closed down the economy, and you don't know shit about it, right? This biological weapon that was released and how it was released and why people agreed with it and how it was done globally and why the global governments kept it a story, and they're not trying to figure out why it happened. Oh, it was bats. Well, it wasn't bats. It happened in a lab in Wuhan, we think. We're not sure. America might have been involved, but let's not look into that, even though it killed 8 million people and we closed down the economy and completely changed the structure of our civilization, let's not look into what caused it and stop it from happening again, because they know what happened and they don't want you to know. So if you understand all that stuff, like all the stuff I've just told you, and the cover-ups and the exclusion from the truth, and the fact that in our very structure of all of our modern-day societies, there's an idea of people who get to know things, whether you get a governmental job and you're passed through to higher levels of knowledge, right? There's various levels of security clearance, and you're given access to knowledge that you, by rule of law, like you'll go to jail if you disclose it to other people, right? If you disclose this knowledge. And so it's secrecy and people knowing things, people who are allowed to know things and people who aren't allowed to know things is a part of every modern day civilization right now, and it has been for a very long time. And with all that secrecy and all that control of information and all that, puppetry and handling of the mob, of the masses, right? Where there's the knowers and there's the workers, right? There's the knowers and there's the slaves. With this structure of civilization that we have and a knowledge base, you think that they don't control Donald Trump? Like, all this control that they exist with, and all these other people that are part of this thing, that they don't control them in some way, because it's a system of control where they have to pretty much stress out all the time, and maybe not now because of the way there's so much disinformation out there, but that you would get access to the real truth. They'd go to extraordinary lengths to disconnect you, now from your family and what used to make you a natural human being, but also from your connection to the divinity that's inside of you, that there is a soul that's inside of you, and for you to think about your soul and connect with your soul and connect with God through your, through the heart, which is your instrument to communicate with God, is something that people have been doing for, hundreds of thousands of years. Millions of years, right? That people have been able to develop these skills. And why only some of the people, like very few people who have spiritual tendencies, develop an inclination to connect with God, to literally have a relationship with God? It's almost nobody. And even like me telling you this, that there's a way to do that, most of you won't even try to do that, right? Like you tell people you could have a connection with your soul and the divinity within you, and most of them are like, oh yeah, okay. And they'll blow it off. They don't even think about it. They dabble in it. They might try it for a little bit or something and lose interest, right? Why do you think that is? Why do you think, the loneliness that people feel, a disconnection from the divinity within, and also a deviation from their soul's path, which as soon as you do that, as soon as you deviate from your divine path, you start feeling lonely and you're disconnected. You're off the farm. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. And there's a feeling of, panic and of regret and things that exist inside people. And they keep on going in the wrong fucking direction. And even when somebody intervenes and says, hey, there's a way to get back on track here, they're like, yeah, it sounds okay. And they might try it for a little bit, but then they'll go back to deviating and walking away from their soul's path, right? And so that's the condition of humanity. And there's people who have figured a way to control all these things and encourage people to go away from their divine principles, their divine purpose, their divine goals, and people have bought into it. And that's why civilization is fucked right now. And there's no political leader or somebody who's going to come in and save humanity, because fucking humanity doesn't want to be saved. Because humanity could, at any time, each individual could reverse their course, connect with God, find out why they're here, and follow, a soul's path that has been laid down in front of them, which is, there's just so much power in that. I don't want to say power, so much, it's just the right thing to do, right? It feels good when you're doing that, right? When you connect back with God, you start, feeling connected, and you lose your feelings of loneliness, and a lot of these psychological issues disappear and things. And so when this happens for people, there's a pathway that just feels right. It's what you're supposed to do, right? And even with that, it's like there's a yearning and a call inside of you, a divine call to do this, right? And people still, refuse to do it, even when they're miserable and they're on medications and their life is in shambles. They still refuse to do it, right? They still would rather go gamble or rather go drink or rather go do some little pleasurable distraction or just wallow in their own fucking self misery and loneliness. I mean, people who are suicidal would rather end their life than connect with their souls, right? And figure out a way to redeem themselves and just get back on course. And so, desperate people, psychologically tortured people, would rather feel the way that they feel than connect with their soul, even when it's presented to them in a palatable, practical way. So, and even when they do connect with their souls, they go like, "Oh, that's pretty good. I like that," and then they go, "I'm gonna go back to what I was doing before, though." And so, I mean, I know this overwhelmingly from my life experience. It's a battle. I struggle with it personally. People who do connect with their souls, there's still a battle between what their ego wants them to do, your impulsive decision making, and then also what your soul and the voice of God that you now hear because you're connected. So your soul and God let you know what you should do, and still there is a predisposition to do the egotistical thing. I mean, even when you start becoming a spiritual person, it's not like it's over. Like there's still a battle between your ego and your soul, and quite often your ego is going to win. And at least in terms of the small things, and the way that you spend your moment to moment time. And so I'm painfully aware of this, and and just, I mean, in terms of people who dabble on the spiritual path, but then the rest of the people who don't want any part of it, even though they're not that happy with what they have, right? Like I can understand someone who's just really happy and their life is great, and like they just enjoying their life. It's a hard sell, but most people are fucking miserable fucks, and they still don't want to do it, right? And with all the pain that they're suffering, all of it, they just don't want to try something else that would alleviate their ability to make the wrong decision, and that's what they're giving up. They're giving up the power to do the wrong thing, to make bad decisions, to go against the divine will, which we are doing collectively as a society and a civilization, and it's very clear. And so, you know, like that's why people are fucked, and there's no reason to complain about it and be a victim, because every person has an option, and most people won't exercise it, and those who do exercise it, they do it, they dabble, and that's at least a step in the right direction, but it is what it is, right? It's not, I mean, people, that's why human beings are, possibly going to go extinct, right? Because there's just, an undisciplined, in terms of the freedom of choice we all have, it's the freedom to make the wrong choice. Like I said over and over again, there's one right choice in every situation. It's what God wants you to do. It's not necessarily the choice, but the intention and the way that you decide something. Like you decide to do the right thing, the higher thing. And when you do that, there's only one choice. But there's an infinite amount of wrong choices. And all those wrong choices, some of them are, very alluring. Some of them are less palatable, but they're all there. And people don't want to give up the ability to do the wrong thing. Because once they do that, they no longer have any power. The ego has no power. Because all the ego can do is choose the wrong thing, right? Once the ego surrenders, like it's like you're surrendering to an inner authority that tells you what to do, and you just do it, right? Like you're surrendering to like an inner master. Master, what do I do, right? And so you're no longer making these choices. You no longer have all this, this plethora, a smorgasbord of wrong choices that you can indulge in. And so people don't want to give that up. The ego does not want to give that up. And for that, all the suffering and all the bullshit that we see around us, all the evil, all the decadence, all the deprivation comes from that. People not wanting to give up control over the ability to do the wrong fucking thing. And that's why humanity is in the state that it's in. And so Trump is not your fucking savior. because, we have to all change to create a better situation. And, Trump certainly is a person of poor character and a big ego person, just like everybody else, and compromised, and, not someone can't lead you in the right direction when they haven't gone in the right direction themselves, right? Like people who are egotistical people who are going away from the divine path that's being illuminated inside of them. How can they possibly lead you when they're just as fucked as you are, right? They might be a little bit smarter, they might have a little bit more charisma, but they don't know where the fuck they're going. Like, how does a person without a map, without a knowledge of not only the how to get to the destination, but the destination themselves? They don't know what the fuck the destination is, and they sell you that this is what the destination is. So first they tell you what the wrong destination is. Like, they make up a goal, or like, your destination is to be rich and famous. Well, that's not your real true destination. Okay, your destination is to be materially wealthy and happy. Yeah, that'd be great, but that's not your destination. That's not your real goal. That's not your purpose here. And then they don't even know how to get you to achieve it, right? Because they achieved it because they were born into it and they just had the right kind of whatever. Donald Trump is rich because he was going to be rich. Some people are going to be rich. Some people are going to be poor. It's just the way it is. Like, he didn't do anything. In fact, he's done everything possible to go bankrupt and, fail, right? So he can't even show you how to be rich, never mind how to be a good president, just like all these other people. And he doesn't have the power to do that because of the secret, the secret elements of information control that's there, of the beings, the human, demons or whatever they are, whatever you want to call them, the people I call the controllers, that are controlling the civilization and managing it, and not giving you access to the information you need to make a informed decision. And in full knowledge now that even if you had that information, you wouldn't be able to do shit with it because you're so under functioning, the majority of people, that even if you had the right information, you wouldn't do anything with it anyway. And so, like, that's our situation, right? That's why we're fucked as a society until something changes. And, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But anyways, let's get into the depravity here. Okay, so I want to add one last thing to this. A few different points here. So right now, in real time, and, something that started in 2015, so 5 years ago, or 10 years ago at this point. 10 years ago, the beginning of the Trump era, in 2015, the powers that be decided to sell to the American people. This is already going on in Europe, so this is a global movement, right? So that's going on in Europe, being pushed in America, being pushed on the Olympics, is that there's a difference between gender and biological sex. The sex that you are, the biological sex, whether you're male or female, there's two of them, is one thing, but gender is something else. Gender, there's something like 200 and something now different types of genders that they're recognizing, right? Something that's been around for a while in the elitist belief system, in the the culture of Hollywood and these places, right? They came out and they sold this, and some complex views about being wrong, being born in the wrong body, and now, of course, the different things with pronouns, right? The whole thing, you know what it is, right? And I started my last video originally, then I dropped a few more introductions on it, the video that I released today on Sunday. And it won't be the last video that you'll see. It'll be the second to last because I have another video that's ready to go now. So 2 videos ago. I started it with Trump talking about how he's getting rid of that. He's going to make an executive order getting rid of all these things. This movement that he didn't have a problem with when it started. He didn't do any pushback, and it was pushed through a lot because of hatred towards him, right? But these ideas were accepted by close to half of the American people, and certainly by young people, and it's not dead yet, right? So if whatever Trump does, he does this thing and it changes for a little while, it goes back to the traditional view of gender and sex being the same thing, and there's only two genders, right? It goes back to this idea. And that you can't change pronouns and these things. They get rid of all that stuff. That Trump and his administration gets rid of all those things. And there's lots of people, older people particularly, that will be happy about that. That doesn't mean it's over. Like, that could be for so many years with Trump. And then, it can go back to this movement. And pretty soon, 70% of people, just like 60% of people, are in favor of abortion, can be in favor of this new paradigm, this new idea, right? And then in 50 years, the old idea will be completely gone, right? I mean, 100 years, if they are successful, this old idea of being two different genders will be completely gone. And what else will be gone? Will marriage be the same, right? If you look at the book Brave New World, there's no marriage. There's just orgies, and all babies are raised in artificial wombs that we're not that far from creating, right? But you see these ideas just disappear. It doesn't take long. 100 years isn't a long time in the span of human history, and we just have these generations of people. I mean, there are things that our kids are growing up with today that they're missing from what we did. I mean, certainly the way they've grown up with the idea of in the real world and then the cyber life. The cyber life is more predominant, right? But there's experiences they're not going to have, they're not having, right, that we had. And just like, there's things that we didn't get from our older generation. Growing up working on a farm, for example, or, any number of things, right, that were things that people used to do for thousands of years, Aboriginal and tribal people and village-based people and things. I mean, those things have disappeared. Like I said, our ancestral knowledge of how to live, to be homesteaders, people were multifaceted. People knew how to make clothes. It used to be doctors used to come to your house. And before that, everybody had a medicine man, and everyone had someone in their family, usually the mom, but maybe, both the parents would have a working knowledge of herbal supplements and remedies, and they would know how to deal with things, right? They'd have working knowledge with various there was a medical person in every family, and there was a shaman in the village, and everybody had some working knowledge of healthcare and how what herbs did what, and how to. I mean, some of it, they had a healthcare system that was localized, right, and it wasn't like it is now based in profit. I mean, the idea of money was introduced. Money hasn't been around that long. Think about how money's changed everything. And so it just takes just one generation to disappear something that's been around for, thousands of years, and people lose sight of it. Like God, the idea of God could not be there, right? I mean, all of a sudden the idea of God could disappear. It doesn't take much. And so any number of things, and there's countries that have already tried to do that, cultures that are anti-religion, right? China and these other, And so there's that part of it. And so the other thing is, part about being a truther, it comes down to an origin story is the biggest thing. Like if you really are going to seek the truth, you have to start at the beginning of the beginning of the line, which is about the origin of your species. It's really kind of, essential, the true nature of human life, and also the nature of your soul and how your soul manifests your body and these things, and the nature of physical life, certainly reincarnation being a big part of that, which is, by any measurable standard, I've discussed reincarnation so much recently that it's essential to understand that, because your soul came from somewhere before and it's going somewhere after. And so there's that already. If you believe in a soul, then you believe in future and past existences. Your soul has existed since the beginning of creation, right? It was brought in whenever, whatever creation story you believe in. Your soul has been around since then. And it's been somewhere, it's been doing something. And so it has a life before this life. You've been recently born. And, there's all these things, past life memories, all this evidence. But like I said, if you did have a soul, then why wouldn't you want to find out more about that, right? And people are not curious about that. They're not curious about these things. But this is, to me, an epic talk. And I have some ideas of meditation, and I have some starting off points, and I start talking, and then the information just flows, and ideas like, if it was coming from me, which it's not, it'd be like I was making it up as I go along, right? Some of it's just a flow of information. I have some parameter and I have some templates and I have some points I want to get to because of just how it comes to me, in this etheric a flow of information that descends into somebody as opposed to coming from them, right? And that's how great works descend from above, and you're merely a conduit. And so, like, I'm aware of it coming out. I'm like, well, this is pretty great. And it's not like I'm pretty great. Oh, I'm so brilliant. I don't think that way at all. Like, it's just, I feel the flow and it's flowing through me. If I'm congratulating myself, it's that I'm getting out of the way as best as possible, letting the information flow through me, right? And so, like, this is an epic talk. It's probably going to be heard by no more than 5,000 people. And I'm putting it at the beginning of the video. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, he's so talking so long. I don't understand what he's saying. And can you get to Britney dancing? Things like that, right? So there'll be a number of viewers who this is off-putting and they want to fast forward through it and they're not interested at all. But of the people who, why was it, first of all, why don't millions of people have this? Like, this is kind of great stuff that, I don't think you're going to get anywhere else, unfortunately. I mean, you might get some of it, whatever, but it's kind of unique to my show, right? And what I do here. And, there's things in here that are maybe, lowbrow comedy or whatever, the things that I put in these videos. It's a mixture of things. But these talks that come through me are the least valued part of my show, right? Most people don't care about them, aren't interested in them, maybe a couple thousand, whatever. That's great. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's just the way it is. And I don't know why millions of people wouldn't be interested in this. If you've been lied to about the origin of your species, just a way of thinking about it, right? And I guess, some credit to my ability to conceptualize things and frame narratives. Like, I guess that's something I'm good at. But in terms of, what's being presented here as a body of work and as something that has value to you, there should be millions of people listening to this. And they're not, right? And that's fine. Like, that's not up to me. But of all the people who listen to this and, I see it has value, those of you who see it has value, only a small percentage of you would say, well, if I tell you this information and the best way to get it, because, there's a difference between science and spirituality. Science, you need to do physical proof of your hypothesis, like I said in maybe my last video. And in spirituality, you're connecting to a higher source and you're having faith in developing a trust relationship and the ability, of discernment to be able just to be told the truth, where you get direct, pure, truthful information about whatever you need at that time. It's more important that it's a need-based thing. Where science, you have an idea of something, and then you try to prove it in the physical world using whatever experiments and abilities you have to prove your thesis or disprove it, right? You're trying to disprove your thesis. So you have an idea, and instead of saying, well, this is an idea that comes from the divine, which, of course, people would be saying that all the time when it's bullshit, so there's a reason why it needs to be done this way. But you have an idea, maybe it comes from an etheric place, and instead of accepting the idea and trying to prove it, science says you have to disprove it. You have to do everything to disprove it, and therefore proving it when all your efforts to disprove it fail, which is an ass-backwards way to do shit, right? And it takes a lot of time, and then it has to be accepted by other people, because then they have to read the research, and then they say, well, did you try this? Did you try to disprove it this way? You didn't think of all the different ways you could disprove it. There's another way to disprove it, right? And it goes through all these fucking egos and everyone trying to be the smartest guy in the room type of bullshit people. And then eventually they accept it as being a real thing, unless money's involved, and maybe they fast track it if there's some kind of money or person of power who's pushing a certain idea that isn't accurate, and so they fudge the science to make it so, right? And so that's the problem with science. But the problem with spirituality, which is so much more efficient, that you can connect to God and get the direct, truthful answer from God, whatever it is, especially when it's a need-based thing, when you really need to know something, right? Because then God will say, all right, this is what you need to do, and the information will just flow into you. But then you have to be pure of spirit. You have to be, you have to minimize your own ego. So the disproving or the the part of it to make sure that it's as accurate is make sure that you're the best conduit, you're objective, and you're not going to insert yourself into this information that you're getting, right? Like whatever information that I am, since channeling right now and in this talk, I can interject little bits of my personality and things like that, which might make it humorous and make it humanize this information, but also it could distort it to some extent, right? So that's the issue with spirituality. But of the two, the spirituality one is the better one. You just have to remain as pure and positive and objective, and you have to create enough faith in the information and yourself as abilities of being a conduit to make sure that this is truthful information that you're receiving. And you're not connecting to some negative spiritual entity or low developed spiritual entity that gives you distorted information. So there is some things there, right? There's always issues with receiving the truth, and there's limitations on the physical planet. But those people who gravitate to these talks and have a curious mind and have an interest in these things, who find value in these talks that I give here, that pass through me, there's very little interest in connecting to the source directly so they can do this, that you can do it yourself. Listening to me is one thing, but, again, you can be given a fish or learn how to fish, and you learn how to fish by doing a spiritual practice, and the one that is, the Sajmark system. And so, my knowledge of that, like very few people who even see the value of what I do here are willing to try and do it themselves, at least embark on that spiritual journey, which is, sad. But then I also know that all these people who did do the spiritual journey and did connect with the source and were doing the Sajmark system have completely fallen and fell for this clown Dodgy who's hijacked the fucking organization. And so that's why when I think about humanity, I know my own struggles, my own battle with my ego, my own limitations in terms of following my spiritual path. But at least I'm trying to do that. I'm working towards that. Like it's a battle. Like most people have surrendered to their egos and their soul is just being diminished. They're unwilling to connect with their soul. They only dabble in it. Like, something horrible happens and they pray to God, right? Like people on a day-to-day basis, they don't think about God until something goes wrong, and then they pray and they ask God for help, and but they're begging God like Santa Claus to change something that's undesirable in their circumstances, right? And so, like, humanity is kind of fucked right now. I mean, this has been my experience. I'm 60 years old now. I've lived through all these different adorations of this thing, and I've observed it. As an observer of humanity always, not always, but for the most part, tends to go in the lower direction. They have a higher nature, we have a higher nature and a lower nature, and we tend to go towards the lower and flirt with the higher for some people, and some people, they don't even acknowledge they have a higher nature. And, the majority of people, or are just completely unaware of it and don't have the ability for abstract thought and they're not evolved enough to even conceive of such a thing. And so, but for me, like I tell people about the meditation, and it's my duty, but I don't have any, I don't get bummed out when people don't do it. And part of me is like, yeah, I'm glad they don't, right? Because it'll just be like more of a burden for me. I mean, I don't have that thought I don't put anything behind that thought, because the thought is always to be, to be hopeful that people will gravitate to something that's higher in their nature and, use a system that's available to connect them to the source in a way that hasn't existed for the masses. This used to be something that only saintly people would somehow gravitate to, higher developed souls. But now everybody has the opportunity because of the need of the day. But the opportunity is always there. It's just that people don't reach up for it. But now it's just more available. And again, things are going to change, and we'll see if something happens. And it's always good to be hopeful. But, if we're being realistic, human beings have not shown, has shown a proclivity of not only, not wanting the truth and not wanting to do what they're supposed to do, but they want to beat the shit out of anybody who does, right? Like, so, I mean, that's humanity as it is now. And hopefully humanity of the future won't be this way, but there's going to be something that has to happen in between to make it so. All right, let's get into the other parts of the video here. Okay. One of my viewers sent me a picture with Chris Hayes. I just did a thing on him in a video, and I had mentioned how all these people should have like a giant dildo outside their mouth, right next to their mouth, with floating in the air with Pfizer written on it. Somebody sent me a graphic of that. I can't. I could actually do it myself here, but I'm not going to because YouTube would frown on that. But anyways, another person sent me an old clip of Hillary Clinton supporters being told things that Donald Trump said, but they were told that Hillary said, and they were agreeing with all those things. But you could say same thing about Trump supporters. They're mindless. And speaking of which, my wife sent me this picture, right? So this picture here, and I thought it was fake, right? So here is Trump gives RFK Jr. McDonald's poison to eat on a private plane. Next U.S. Health Secretary forced to grin and bear it after previously criticizing the president-elect's really bad diet. In the New York Post, RFK poses with Big Mac and a Coke on Air Trump Force One after pledging to make America healthy again. They'll do anything to shit on him, the New York Post, right? But here's the picture. So I thought this was fake, but I found that it was covered in all these news agencies. My wife sent this to me from Reddit. And, I said this when Trump was when he did that McDonald's thing. And he talked about how he loved McDonald's. The guy who owned McDonald's was a Trump friend. And it was a closed McDonald's that they opened up just so Trump could do his bullshit PR thing after Kamala said she had worked there earlier. And at the same time, he was talking about the healthy foods with RFK Jr. and McDonald's is poison, right? We all know it's poison. It's it's got carcinogens in it, and it's got stuff that certainly is going to hurt your liver, toxic, whatever it might be, right? Things that anybody who knows about the healthy foods. I mean, most people know that McDonald's is just brutal, right? Sodas. I mean, it's just corn syrup, and it's just liquid death, right? All these things leading to obesity, not just in terms of death, but making the quality of your life worse. And Trump saying that he wants to make America healthy again, but they do this photo op. And the reason I thought it was fake is because they don't even give Mike Johnson a seat, right? These are, the Trumpers, the Trump, Donald and Donald Jr., and of course Elon Musk, and then RFK Jr.'s got the Big Mac in his hand, right? And he's forced to pose for this thing. For what? This is promoting Coke. It's promoting McDonald's and Donald Jr. holding these fries up, like really making sure it's from McDonald's, right? Which you already kind of knew. And so this is a photo op, and they're on their way to an MMA fight. Now, if you want to learn martial arts to defend yourself and whatever it is, right, as a young person, but MMA fights, they are not healthy, right? And watching two guys beat the shit out of each other for your entertainment is, like gladiator stuff, right? It's slave stuff. Boxing, all these things. I mean, even sports in general is kind of like that. The old Roman and Greek days and these things, these ancient Colosseums where these things played out at these old empires. And then across the globe, and then, it's a violence for the masses, right? It's a substitute for war, for human beings' violent tendencies. And fueling yourself with this poison, I mean, again, like this isn't an accident. I mean, they're all posing, except for this clown, right? He's getting fucked right here. And so how can you take this seriously when he thinks this is quality food? That he's willing to put this in his body, at least pretending to do so. And he's actually pitching for McDonald's. Like all of his supporters, I mean, this is a huge win for McDonald's. And I don't know if they gave him money to do this, but it already shits all over anything that RFK Jr. is going to do. He's getting used. I mean, he's getting used, which is the only logical explanation, that they're putting this guy out like he's going to be health secretary and then he's going to get voted down and then he won't be able to have any influence at all because he won't be, not that he just didn't get a position. Like he could have been like Elon Musk and, that other clown, whatever it is, that are just unofficial advisors to the president, and they don't have a role in a governmental position. But when you get denied that government position, you just disappear. And this is Trump's way of getting rid of RFK Jr. now that he doesn't need him. And so he won't be voted in. And we'll see, but if he is voted in, Trump's going to undermine anything he's going to do because he's pushing McDonald's food, right? Like, he's on a private jet. And there's no McDonald's probably in the airport. So someone had to go bring this McDonald's food from wherever the closest McDonald's is to the airport. And then, it's probably cold and, been sitting there for a half hour. I mean, it's not great when it's fresh, right? Okay, so I have one McDonald's story. So I used to eat fast food. I used to eat at Wendy's. I didn't like McDonald's when I got into my college years. I thought Wendy's was at least better, like more realistic meat burgers. But I'm not pitching Wendy's here. But, I stopped eating fast foods and meat when I started doing, when I got in the later years of my life, and my late 20s, I mean, not my later years of my life. And then I started doing the Sajmark system, and a vegetarian diet was recommended, which eventually, for 18 years I was a vegetarian. My kids grew up as vegetarians, and they grew up eating healthy foods. Of course, we had a farm, but they still had health issues, right? And we had tried to protect them from the internet. They had access to a computer, but they shared it, and they didn't have cell phones. My kids growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, or, the mid 2000s. But by 2013, my kids were teenagers, and my marriage was falling apart, and a lot of things my ex wanted to do in terms of health and food, she wasn't good at some of her ideas were good. I had, similar ideas, but she was more the health nut type of person. But they didn't translate into their kids having good health. And my daughter particularly, she had all these, just chronic, illnesses. They weren't severe, but just not, she was sick a lot. But the whole family had suffered various things, right? The kids should have been healthier, but, it was a difficult environment because of the crazy, right? So anyways, we went to found this online chiropractor who was a vegan, and he recommended that my daughter start eating meat because of, just needing to be stronger. And that, these kids growing up today, no matter what they ate in terms of health foods and all these things, they were just not as healthy. And that was back in the 2000s. It's gotten worse over time, right? Whatever's in the environment, whatever way the internet's affecting them. But even kids growing up on organic food, and I grew up on we grew up on toxic. I ate McDonald's when I was a kid, right? So when we went to India and we stayed there for an extensive period, and the whole vision of an intergenerational family farm fell apart. All these things, and I realized my kids were going to need to have cell phones and live a normal life because they weren't going to have this other option because that had failed, right? That the marriage had failed and the family had failed. So I let my kids have cell phones, and they were playing video games because had they, if I had kept that from them and all their friends were having these things, then, they would, they would resent it. It would be, even when they got, old enough to make their own choices when they were 18 or whatever, they would probably get addicted, binge on it because it had been something that had made precious to them because it had been withheld, right? So anyways, we had started to eat meat, and, because we all were suffering from we were just kind of beat down and weakened by whatever's going on. And I've continued to eat meat since then. And so when we returned to America, we were in an apartment complex, and there was a McDonald's like right across the street. And I said, well, let's just go there. You guys can try it one time, right? Just so you guys get a sense of what it is. And I remember I used to eat a quarter pounder with cheese when I was a kid, but I said I'll order a Big Mac. Like, we all got something. And I felt so bad. The kids that didn't feel great, like they didn't want to go back. But I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. Whenever I'm doing something like that, I don't like have regrets or think negative thoughts about it. Like, I do it with, like, I'm just going to enjoy this thing, right? Like, which is the best way to approach something. If you have doubts about it, or you're like hemming and hawing, then you're putting your mental force behind it sucking. So I went into, like, this was going to be my kids' McDonald's experience. It was a one-time thing. And I was like, oh my God, the food made me feel horrible. Like, I ate like a Big Mac. I couldn't even finish it. I'm like, this isn't food, right? As someone hadn't eaten in McDonald's in like 20 years. But it's not something I would ever, it was a one-time thing, just as, like I said. And, people know this, and most people know this. There was that movie Super Size Me, and this whole thing with RFK Jr. So, this guy's playing this guy. He's working him. And it's a little bit funny. So there's Mika looking for her Pfizer. So one of my viewers sent me this. I haven't watched it yet. But there's a similar thing from AOC.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time
They went to Mar-a-Lago. So they're in Florida. Now, I think they're together here, but they do their show out of Florida. This happened during COVID, and they built a big studio there. So that's why you don't see them. Once in a while they're in New York or wherever it is, or they have people maybe come there. I don't know what it is. But they have people sitting around a round table. But oftentimes they're in their own home. And so they're in Florida themselves, right? In some $12 million, house or whatever. They're getting paid exorbitant fees for just shilling for the Democratic Party and just horrible. I think they get okay ratings. I mean, nothing to write home about. None of these mainstream media people do. But compared to other morning shows or whatever, they're being funded like they're not, like CNN is like hemorrhaging money and they can't get their morning show together or whatever. Like they're beating CNN. Like, I mean, if that's a barometer of success. But here they are going to, kneel before Trump at Mar-a-Lago, right?
We have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade.
That you're not a real boy, you're actually Gumby in whiteface.
That we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Butler, that fake shit that you guys actually pretended was real. Like, that's what makes you more shills than anything else. Like, they think that there should be privilege to have conversations with somebody, they hate each other, right? But Trump allowed them in. I don't know why he would even bother doing that, because they're not going to pass it. I mean, they're not going to endorse his positions.
In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful. He was upbeat. He seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraud...
Yeah, everyone should be, by the way that you have conducted yourself like he's basically a demon. I mean, you guys can't go in on somebody like you went in on Trump and then go to his lair, go to hell in Mar-a-Lago and do all the stuff that you did, right?
At times, especially between us. I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Because of all the things I just said.
5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the...
No, they don't believe him. They don't believe what you believe. That's the issue. It's not whether they're important or not. They don't even think it's a real thing. I mean, very few people who voted for Trump think those things are real. They don't trust you. They think you're the exact carbon copy of Trump, just on the Democratic side, that you guys make up shit. All you guys do. And you're shilling for Big Pharma or whatever else. And the January 6th thing was, a joke compared to what you guys made it into, right? Like, you guys talk about Trump being stupid, incompetent. You guys went in on his being senile. You tried to say that Trump was breaking down mentally more than Joe Biden was. That was the kind of bullshit you guys pulled. You two Pfizer shills were doing, right? And then all the things that you did about Trump that were false, and all these things that you promoted, and you yourself admitted to spinning, because you said we're not spinning now, and that you're responsible to tell the American people what to think and not Trump. These are things that, I've showed multiple times. The memes, I'm not going to do it here. I just did it recently. But either way, they don't believe what you believe. It's not that those things aren't bad. They don't believe the story that you guys are telling. The same way you guys don't believe Trump and Fox News and these other things, because you guys are all bullshitters, right?
The issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Boom. It's time you guys do something different. How about not sucking for a minute? I'm not asking for a whole show. Just a minute of not sucking. Say something that has any kind of value, something that has any kind of truth behind it. And just your personalities, restrain your personalities for just a minute. And do something that actually contributes to make the world a better place. And then, that would be something good to try. Okay, this is something called Rachel's Pop Culture Roundup. I guess this is Rachel, but this could also be Rachel. She's very angry here. But this is AOC. So along these same lines, right? Some of these people are running scared, and you can tell they didn't believe in what they said they believed in, because how quickly they abandon their beliefs. Here's this.
All right, well, it's time for another pop culture roundup. Fox News contributor Lisa Booth is here to help
Boom, Lisa Booth.
break down all the latest stories. By the way, loving Lisa's hair. I keep telling her, I love this.
Her hair is amazing. I can't believe she has such great hair. I'm like, oh my God, Lisa's hair. It's been woven by, been loomed by the angels.
Thank you. Love it. All right, starting off with AOC. She has apparently removed her pronouns from her X profile. And she also asked this. She wanted to ask her people why you voted for her and Trump.
Okay, so that's kind of messed up, because if that's a real thing, right? If pronouns, this whole pronoun thing is real, then you would, of course, do it. Like I say all the time. Truth is what it is. It's not what I say it is. It's not what you say it is. If you're pursuing the truth, you're pursuing the truth. But most people, even in the truth community, I kind of dabble in it. I'm not, I'm interested in finding the truth. And people are interested in finding the truth about a specific thing that bothers them. Like UFOs or something, or the lies behind Watergate or some shit like that. People go after, a very specific truth. But the overall truth is what it is in any situation, right? Whether you believe in the traditional binary model of sexuality, or you believe in this new model that they're pushing with multi-gendered, and that you could be a multiplicity of your pronouns could be they, them, right? You either believe in it or not, whether it's either true or it's not, and you either believe in it or you don't. And so for AOC to cave on this thing, right? If that's what she's done here, they said apparently.
Watch.
If you voted for Donald Trump and me, or if you voted for Donald Trump and voted Democratic down ballot, I would really love to hear from you. Just tell me what your thought process was.
Okay, so I saw that video clip because somebody sent it to me, or it was recommended by YouTube. And so, she's going through some soul searching. I don't know if she'll find any soul.
All right. Well, people said, by the way, she has 21 million followers on just Instagram and Twitter combined. So that's amazing.
It's kind of a lot. That's kind of.
Yeah, a lot of those people are doubled up, but yeah.
Also, and if you remember 2 years ago, she put them up because her progressive followers were like, why don't you have pronouns in your bio? But look, I think the woke tide is over. Americans are tired of this pronoun nonsense.
It's over for now. Like, don't think it's dead. You should never underestimate your opponent in depravity and movements. It's dead for now. Trump is going to have a bad presidency. Trump is going to be in for a rough ride. And American people are going to be in for a rough ride. There are things that the inflation is worse than that people are saying, and there's just a lot of things that are going on that aren't going to end well. And Trump is a bullshitter. He can't make America great again. That's a lie. And so people are believing he's going to do something he's not going to do. He's going to fail. If nothing else, he's going to fail, which we all kind of deep down we know. And so when he does fail, and when things turn against him and the liberals are weaponized again and there's those protests and all those things, they're going to push this thing again, right? Like right now, it's like they got thumped in an election, but when they realize that Trump is now unpopular again, his approval rating goes down, and they're going to push back against all these Trump things, then they're going to try to revive this movement. It's not dead. It's just, that they've suffered a loss.
Nonsense, this transgender nonsense. If you look at the best ad that Donald Trump ran during the election cycle, it was Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. It was aired over 15,000 times during NFL games in swing states. People are tired of this nonsense.
It was effective. Listen,
a single person cannot be a plural.
Love her or hate her, she is a
Why are you sorry?
populist, which is why she got the Trump vote and the AOC vote in her district.
Yep.
And she is in touch with where the people are at. I actually am not going to criticize her. I think it's good for her to respond to what's happening in the.
They're obviously doing a little bit of adjustment, Morning Joe and her. But, you can't go in on something like that and then say, I guess it was just a joke and then I'm not doing it anymore, right? You either believe in the pronoun things or you don't. And if you didn't believe in it all along, then you shouldn't have pushed it. If you're just going along with it because your followers and the people, that's what politicians do. But she's supposed to be, somebody who's into this stuff, that she's a progressive voice. That means you never believed in the pronoun things all along. And, you caved like that. So this is worth a lick-see. AOC explains the AOC Trump voter, the Read Out full interview. And so Joy Reid and AOC try to figure out why people voted for Trump, which is just wonderful.
Skip the top of the ticket, which, by the way, there's been a lot of paranoia about the fact that Democrats were able to win statewide in some places while Kamala Harris lost. And I keep trying to tell people there are voters who go in and either just vote the top, Trump voters who will say, I just want Trump and don't care about Republicans, and the reverse, who say, I'm not voting top of the ticket, but I'll vote everybody else.
Right. And I think we saw some of that happen as well. But when it comes to people who split their ticket, I think a lot of people cited several different things. One is there is universal frustration in this country, much of it I actually think justified, that is raging at a political establishment that centers corporate interests, billionaires, and puts their needs ahead of the needs of working Americans.
Okay, so that's not it, right? That's a message you guys would like people to be mad about, right? But it's the fact that people no longer have faith in the established media and the established official story and the establishment in general, and they don't trust any of it. And Trump, although he's not anti-establishment, in fact, he's probably more pro-establishment than any other candidate, he acts like a normal person. He acts like at least a real person, not a normal person. And he says things that, go outside of the bandwidth of the bullshit that you guys try to control as the message, right? And so, if Trump actually won, again, these things are all rigged and staged or whatever, I can't imagine Kamala Harris ever beating anybody. because of her, the whole thing. But you guys had a candidate, they had a president and a candidate who had obvious dementia, and you forced him on the American people in the way that you did the whole COVID bullshit as well, and all of those things and the related issues with COVID. I mean, there's so many people that are just disgusted and have been harmed in one way or another, have suffered in some way, either health related or financially, because of the Biden debacle. And you guys forcing a senile candidate and broken policies on the American people, like you wanted Trump to win again. I mean, the way that you went about all those things, you were setting yourself up, in the future. You were setting up 2024 by the way that you handled 2020, and then what you did afterwards. I mean, it's not about people being mad at billionaires. Most Americans think they're going to be rich, right? Americans aren't as prejudiced against the rich as people say, because most Americans have dreams of being successful and rich and being stars either on the internet or something, or being celebrities, because Americans have these pie-in-the-sky dreams.
And we know that we can either channel this righteous rage, because there are people whose SNAP was cut off, their child tax credits were cut off, but they're seeing people like Elon Musk getting tax breaks and kissing up to Donald Trump in order to do so.
But they vote for, then why vote for Elon Musk and Donald Trump?
So you totally didn't get it, right? You totally didn't get this. The only thing you guys have a legitimate insight into is Israel. That the young voters were pissed about Israel.
I think that, of course, is the question.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense what you just said. Like, you're full of shit. She just told AOC her old position. She's full of shit.
I think part of it has to do with the fact that, and I think we're still in a process.
Oh, process. When I was in New Mexico, and I got my master's in counseling in a very liberal college with very liberal people, like a lot of people that were in Santa Fe, New Mexico, a lot of liberals there, California liberals, right? A lot of people in the gay community were students at the college, and it was a college that had a master's degree in counseling and in our therapy class, right? And a lot of these people were really invested in mental health and, had gone to multiple therapists, and it was a good school, but, the people were all right. I didn't, have issues with them. I mean, some of them, they were like, there was this one girl who hated them. I didn't have any classes with her, but then we had a class. I was there for she was in her final semester, and I had 2 semesters to go. And she was somebody was kind of like me, then most of the people weren't. But, it was okay, right? But we had to not only learn about therapy, then we had to demonstrate the model. We had to participate in the model of therapy that we were learning about in these long weekend courses, which is a good way to teach this kind of stuff, right? And people were, had to act as therapists and or clients. And we would, role play, do things, and, go and actually kind of do mini therapy sessions, do other kind of things based in the model of therapy to learn how it was used and stuff. So it was a good way to do it. But, it was older people there. And she said one time, she was sitting there in a group, a group setting, and she was said something like, "You guys are all fucked in the head." And then she went, "Oh my God, I just said that out loud." And so there were people, that had issues with these liberal people, and they were very whatever they were. And the reason I'm saying all this is because they use the word process, like I believe the word aloha is used in Hawaiian, where process means so many different things. I'm in process right now. Oh, when the process, they would use these words over and over again. Process was one of them, which it had definitely all these meanings that it wasn't originally intended to. But once I completed my process, but there was, ways that, it was used as a noun and a verb, and, it meant hello and goodbye, and, process, long live and long life and process. And so this is, her thing.
Of going through the data. It's important to say that.
Yes.
And I actually think that it's important to say that the people who are rushing to say, let me give you my grand theory of what...
Like you just did. You mean like you just did 2 minutes ago, and Joy said you were full of shit?
going on right
the problem
now.
is you went too woke. Sorry, Kamala Harris was running with Liz Cheney at her side. She wasn't.
It was the woke stuff that she wouldn't deny. It doesn't matter. Like, you guys don't get it. Like, it doesn't matter if she had Liz Cheney by her side. Nobody cared about Liz Cheney. You thought Liz Cheney was going to be, I mean, like that was her selling out on her democratic principles, that she went Hollywood and she represented wokeism, and it isn't what she ran on. It's all the stuff people knew about her beforehand and her California values and all of it, right? Her whole family was woke. I mean, the whole DNC was woke, right? And so, like, you guys think that people couldn't see through that? That's your problem. Like, you think people buy into this bullshit that you guys pitch, right? I mean, it's not necessarily, people didn't necessarily buy into Trump's bullshit, but, like, they at least see that he's not pretending not to be a bullshitter.
Going quote unquote woke.
If we had an election on November 5th and November 6th, you've got an answer.
Right.
Don't listen to those people.
I agree.
Like you just had an answer, right? Like, what about the kind of person that takes her pronouns down? Apparently, this is a real thing. She took her pronouns down. It hasn't talked about it since. Like, so you don't think it's about going too woke, but you took your pronouns down? I don't even know why you would do that. Like, it doesn't matter, but you obviously think it's in your political interest to not have your pronouns there anymore. Like, you're a complete sellout. Like, you should have stuck with what you believe. It makes you look weak and pathetic.
Do not listen to those people.
Co-sign.
So I want to say that we should all have the humility of saying this is an ongoing learning process. However,
it's a process. However,
there is something to be said about it doesn't matter that he's lying. He's saying that I'm fighting for you.
It doesn't matter that you're lying, and the differences between your lies and his lies is he kind of like admits, or without admitting, that he's a lying piece of shit. Like, people know that he's real about it. Well, you guys pretend like you're some kind of higher authority, and you're just not. Like, you guys aren't better. You're not more sophisticated. You're not more intelligent. You're kind of in a way more educated, but not in the way that would help the American people or yourself understand reality and understand how you're perceived by other people. Okay, so this donor girl is making the rounds on Fox News.
Lindy Lee is a Democrat donor and member of the DNC's National Finance Committee. Are you hearing that too, that people might not donate as much anymore? Why?
Absolutely. Jesse, thank you so much for having me. And I said on Fox a couple of days ago that it was a $1 billion disaster. I made a mistake. It was a $2 billion boondoggle, because I failed to mention that close to $1 billion was raised to the super PAC as well for Future Forward, in addition to the $1 billion that was raised for the campaign. We need serious accounting and to find.
So they spent $2 billion on ads. My wife and I were talking about this. Whatever they spent on Oprah, which I covered in my last, her last interview with whoever it was, Chris Cuomo's, that it was like, was it $16 million on Oprah, whatever it was, right? Apparently she gave Beyonce $10 million to show up for that. That doesn't translate into votes. Like, people who need Beyonce or Oprah or any number of these celebrities to tell them to vote, they ain't voting, right? Or they're not, you can't count on them, right? The people who would listen to celebrities and about politics, I mean, it actually hurts you more than it helps you. But either way, that still doesn't account for $2 billion in money spent on these ads. I mean, think about how many ads I saw of Kamala Harris. Like, every time I turned on the news and or sports, there was ads for Kamala Harris in a state that was not going to be won by her. I mean, she was advertising in red states, and that she had no chance of winning. And so, I mean, that in itself, I mean, some of those were national ads that she was paying for. Maybe that was to get out more popular vote. I don't know. But they blew $2 billion in 3 months, right? It was a very short campaign. And,
Find out why $4 million went to private jets, millions of dollars went to celebrities, why Oprah was paid $1 million. And don't give me that spiel about how Oprah didn't take personal payment. She could have said, I will make an in-kind contribution and not take the $1 million. She made a conscious decision to take that $1 million payment. So it's totally on her.
So you're running the finance team at the Democrat National Committee. And when you hear these reports, we had a guest on the other day, Wolf of Wall Street, says this looks like a money laundering operation.
It's insane. We spent $450,000 on the Sphere. Do you really think that resonates with working class families around America? These people.
The Sphere is in, that thing in Las Vegas. I think that's what she's talking about. She was in charge of raising money for the Democratic National Committee, and she was a donor, and so she had a position, and like he just called it a money laundering scheme, which is, $1 billion, and then they end up $20 million in debt after all that, to the $2 billion, because they had a super PAC as well. And so it sounds like a scam, but we saw the ads. It's a lot of ads. But my God, right? For that kind of result.
People are hurting from cumulative price hikes, and you're putting your face on a giant ball? You really think that's going to make the difference? And AOC is right. Trump is constantly reminding folks that he feels their pain. And he understands. In the meantime, my party is unwilling to say that we need strong borders, we need secure borders. And I'm speaking as a naturalized American myself. My family waited in line. I didn't storm the southern border. We came through JFK Airport. We applied to be American citizens.
Okay, so she's, the more she appears, the less credibility she has. But everything she's saying is, sounds about right. This looks like some kind of podcast or Will Cain show. I guess it's a show.
Committee. She had several.
This guy used to be on ESPN, I think.
Leadership positions within the campaign for Kamala Harris. In fact, Lindy, good morning to you. Nice to see you again today. Can we start with you kind of sharing with my audience, what roles did you have within the DNC or within the campaign for Kamala?
Well, I'm absolutely shocked, but I actually still have those roles. I don't know how.
Well, because if you can bring in money, they don't give a shit of what you're saying here on Fox. I'm
getting the emails, I'm getting the updates, so it is now the DNC National Finance Committee. So they had a fundraising agreement between the DNC and the Harris campaign that allowed them to bypass a $3,300 contribution. So one person can give like $929,600. But now, since the campaign is over, it is now just the DNC National Finance Committee, which I'm still very much on for. Wow. So I also serve as women's chair, Mid-Atlantic Regional Chair, and senior advisor, et cetera. So it's been a crazy time. Every day there seems to be another revelation, and I can't believe, Will, that our interview went just like insanely viral across the world.
So to help anyone out who isn't plugged into politics on a day-to-day basis, and titles don't necessarily paint the full picture, what did you do for Kamala Harris?
So in order to qualify for the National Finance Committee, you needed to have raised like millions of dollars. And I did that. Not only in terms of big donors, but also grassroots donors. I helped to organize something called Geeks and Nerds for Harris. We had like Mark Hamill and like Ron Perlman and Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, involved to raise money. You raised like $500,000 for that. So I didn't just work with ultra wealthy people, but like regular everyday Americans. And that's why I feel a grave sense of responsibility. I don't want to see their money going towards like $100,000 for a Call Her Daddy set. And this is very hard for me to say because these are my friends, and Kamala Harris has always been good to me. This is hard for me to say, but I also
It's always been good to her because you've been dumping money in her lap. Don't say she's always been good to you. You gave her millions of dollars, and what did she give you in return, right? She's knee pads. What did knee pads give you in return?
Understand that if we don't have a full financial accounting of what happened, not only financial accounting, but a political explanation of what happened, we're going to keep losing. And if we don't recognize that America is shifting rightward, go ahead. Sorry, Will.
Let's pick up on your no, it's okay. Let's pick up on your bona fides for just a moment, because I want to get some new information you have to share with us today. But let's go ahead and steel man your perspective. What I mean by that is let's take on the critics for a moment. Like you just said that this isn't easy for you, that you're talking about your friends. Judge Janine Pirro on the Five
that was so
said
funny.
that she thought you were an idiot for believing any polls that were coming out within the campaign to convince you there was a real chance or a margin of error election for Kamala Harris. So what do you say, A, to Judge Pirro, but B,
Well, you could call her like a welded face skank that's repulsive. It's a wonder that she still has a show.
what do you say to those who are like, why is she saying all of this about her former friends on Fox?
All right, so number one, I think a nuance has been lost. My point is they were telling us they were going to win when they knew they were going to lose. So that's the key point. So at what point did they know they were inevitably going to lose and they still asked us for millions of dollars? That is my question, because that's what I mean by being misled. What sort of internal polling did they have access to? And actually, Jackie Heinrich brings up a really good point. The Doug Emhoff, who was kissing Kamala Harris on Monday night on the forehead, was kissing a woman who knew she was about to lose, not the next president of the United States. I thought that was a really interesting insight. So when did they know? Basically, the age-old question, who knew and when did they know it? That's my point. This is not me being snookered by what Jen O'Malley Dillon said.
Right.
What I mean is they told us, they gave us a narrative that they themselves may not have believed. That's my point.
Okay, so this goes on. It's 25 minutes long, but this is I don't know why Judge Janine would be criticizing her because she's doing what Fox wants her to do here. So this is been up for a week on my toolbar. I just haven't got to. It's kind of hilarious.
Peter Doocy asking a question in the White House briefing room. Let's listen in.
Transition of power.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son, Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this.
There's a rabbit hole. Or whatever. It's not like I've been smoking crack and.
Been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
And we know that at some point during the last Trump transition, then President Obama warned Trump that the biggest threat to the U.S. at the time was North Korea. Is President Biden going to run through what he sees the biggest threats to the country are with Donald Trump?
I am not going to get into a specific agenda of what they're going to discuss. And this is very much to the question that I got from MJ. What is
MJ? Look, MJ, we gave a great question. Who is MJ? What's up with Ducey's hair here? But here's the big question coming up here.
the president what's the message he wants to send tomorrow? And it is to the American people. The importance of keeping the norms, the importance of having a transition that is going to be efficient. This is what the American people deserve. And that's the message. And I think when you all come into the Oval Office tomorrow, you do the pool spray, you capture that moment. That is an important message.
It's an important moment. An important moment when Trump and Biden sit down together, and Biden's got the biggest smile I've ever seen him have before.
Message to send to the American people. That's what the president cares about. I'm not going to get into details about any conversation or agenda.
She's so much better than Jump is sucky, but she's just so gaslighting and condescending, and like she's smoother with her delivery, and she's obviously, going to frustrate you because she doesn't ever answer anything or admit to anything. I don't know about Jen Psaki, but Jen Psaki's so stiff on TV.
And we know that today, a week after the election, President Biden and Vice President Harris had a private lunch. How awkward was that?
Ducey bringing up a hilarious question.
I don't even understand. Why would it be awkward?
Because
why would it
the president
be,
got squeezed out for her,
you,
and then she kept him at arm's length, and then she lost, and now she's back.
Why would you characterize it as awkward? They have regular lunches. They meet and talk regularly. Why would you call it awkward?
Weirdness about the way that things have unfolded.
Did you see them? Did you see them together yesterday as well when they?
This is the best part.
Honored our veterans and we're together during the day, making sure that we didn't forget the brave men and women that.
So you're saying that this performative thing that they did, this Veteran Day event, one of these campaign events, you're trying to say that shows that they have a good relationship, that they were sincere with each other, that they got on stage and pretended to like each other, and that we would believe that's what their relationship is behind closed doors? Like, this is like how stupid you think everybody is. Like, this is why you guys have you lost to Trump, and Trump was like, he really didn't have a pathway to victory, according to, the American people's disdain for the guy. He was card capped at 48%. And even that some of those 48% really didn't want to vote for him. But that's how bad you guys are. That you're not getting it. The woke stuff is bad. But lies like this, like you're pretending that when she went out with Joe Biden to honor the veterans, and they were cordial to each other and smiled with their fake smiles and their, crocodile smiles and their crocodile tears and, all that stuff they do. That was real? You're trying to say that was real? And the American people can't see through that shit? I mean, she's just like horrible. Just...
For this country, did you see them together yesterday? Did you see the show of force together? This is like,
It wasn't awkward at all, even though she stabbed him in the back. They never liked each other beforehand. He screwed her over by making her czar of the southern border. Like, she didn't want that. He stuck her with that, and then she stuck him in the back when people realized he had dementia, and then he undermined her and kept on getting her to be a part of his administration, even though she was trying to run against it. She was running on turning the page, and he was like, you were part of that page, and like that stuff, and he shit on her when he had those press conferences in the middle of her announcements and stuff. No, it wasn't awkward at all. They just had this cordial, they just love each other. Okay, so I forgot about this delicate little flower here.
I was struck by how fucking dumb both of these guys are. Just aggressively.
She's talking about Trump and Joe Rogan.
Aggressively fucking stupid. And I was like, that was the first thing. I was like, wow. Second thing was that Rogan, given the limits of... He's a very curious person, which I think is why he's good at making a podcast, because he does have like a sort of curiosity. Despite the fact that I'm like, you can kind of hear the squeaking of the brain cells. There is a lot of curiosity there, right? But what struck me was how much Joe Rogan was trying to help Donald Trump along.
Yeah, that happened in the interview. We tried to keep Donald Trump on track. But Kamala Harris didn't even appear on this, right? She doesn't give any context to why they're stupid, right? Just that they're stupid. But they're stupid because, as far as I can tell, here's her other show here.
Welcome to another edition of this fucking guy. The series where we pick one fucking guy making America worse and explain why they suck. I'm Erin Ryan, host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco, the other host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
Alyssa, are you...
So they're anti-men, right? Because, whatever this is, they have a prejudice against men, and they must buy into all the other liberal feminist bullshit. And so that's why she thinks they're stupid. But you had a feminist candidate. And again, winning and losing the election isn't a barometer of whether something's right or wrong. It doesn't matter whether the American people think it's right or wrong, because American people are stupid and are not, for the most part, they don't really put much effort into finding out the truth, right? They just want to have somebody alleviate their problems. And that's the problem that's been created by democracy. Democracy has made people think their opinions matter, as is the internet, where everybody has an opinion, thinks their beliefs and their opinions matter and change things. And they do, but not in a good way. And that they just want somebody to cater what they think, that they're some kind of barometer of truth and everybody should be just like them. And like, this is the whole thing. Everyone should have the same mindset and same belief system that they have, right? And so, like, this is where the democracy caters to that, because people are coming out every 4 years as president, and then in local elections and smaller elections every 2 years or whatever it is, and telling them and their, the mayor and the people that your opinion matters and they want your vote, and people think that they are participating in some way when they're really not, because voting is not really participating. Going out and voting and then doing nothing else but paying taxes and obeying the law and having a job, it's participating in the system, but isn't doing anything to change it, right? And so, for her to say out of context that these guys are stupid, well, Trump is definitely not as smart as he likes to tell people he is. But Joe Rogan is, he's no a rocket scientist, but he has relatively interesting points of view, and he flirts with truth or concepts, right? But they have this anti-man show that's about,
You ready to talk about a fucking guy? Our first ever female fucking guy?
Yes, ma'am. Equality means
She looks like Jill Biden. So they have a female on for the first time.
both men and women can be fucking guys.
Thank you, Lean In. So this week...
Yeah, but everyone except for you guys. You guys won't be fucking any guys. And so, let's move on. See, the thing is that, the stuff that they're calling dumb is what we consider truther stuff, right? I mean, she has here this, a lot of stuff is just crapping on Donald Trump. It says, Kamala Harris delivers powerful closing speech while Trump rambles on Joe Rogan. It's, what I think the rest of this title is going to be, given the thumbnail, right? But for her to call them dumb when she's talking about Kamala Harris's powerful speech was just her linking together a bunch of her talking points and bumper sticker speech, right? Now, Trump and Joe Rogan are rocket scientists, but they're not, they're above average intelligent. Kamala Harris, I mean, I assume she's got some level of intelligence. In terms of, book knowledge and things. Her parents were both educators. But you never know that because she just recites these talking points and bumper sticker lines. She never showed any sort of real ability to analyze what's going on and verbalize her own opinions that weren't based in poll numbers and what her handlers told her to say. And if you can't see through that, you're not, a smart person. You have a low level of consciousness. If you can't see through Kamala Harris's bumper sticker bullshit, right? Like this is, all these various things. And if you're caught in the left-right paradigm, you're not smart. If you think that the left and the right are not working together to control you, then you're not smart. Like it's not a matter of your IQ, it's a matter of your level of consciousness. And when you have a job doing this, you're either lying to people because it's not true, but you lie to them anyway, or you're just bought into it, which is, I don't know which one's worse. And it's put on by Donald Trump's YouTube channel.
We can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Remember when Fox called this and the other ones didn't? Then they play a bunch of inspirational music and they show Trump in his plane, his private jet. They show him marching like he's a leader. They're walking like a frickin' dumpling over there. He's not sad dumpling. Then here he comes out to address the people. There he is, and playing this music. There he is pointing at somebody. There he is shaking a military guy's hand. There's wearing a hat. There he's doing half of his funny dance he does. There he is with a thumbs up around oil riggers. There's J.D. Vance speaking. There's J.D. Vance holding his kid that looks like Pebbles from the Flintstones. There's he doing his fist pump again. There's that woman smiling. There's Elon Musk being like a complete dork. There's Tulsi Gabbard posing. There's RFK Jr. before they fucked him on McDonald's at the play. There's Trump after he got this imaginary bullet that hit him in his ear. There's Melania who hates her husband because he's cheated on her with a porn star. It says he was 45 and 47. Kaboom. And so it's time. There's no substance in that at all. This is if you go to Trump's YouTube channel, at least when I saw this the other day, this is what they had up there. It's just fake, right? Like all the Trumpers, we'll see what happens. I mean, there's going to do something, but it's not going to make America, he's not going to be making America great again. Okay. And so one last, fuck you to Putin. The Biden administration has now said they're allowing the Ukrainians to use long-range weapons that can hit inside the heart of Russia. And so Putin has basically said that this would lead to World War III and war with NATO. President Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to strike inside of Russia with long-range missiles supplied by the U.S. has sparked furious response in Russia. Departing U.S. President Joe Biden has taken one of the most provocative, uncalculated decisions of his administration, which risks catastrophic consequences, declared the website of the Russian government newspaper so-and-so. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Russian MP Leonid Slutsky. Slutsky's got the real inside information. Head of the pro-Kremlin liberal democratic predicament, that decision would inevitably lead to a serious escalation, threatening serious consequences. In an unprecedented step towards World War III, has been said. And so what really counts is how Putin responds to this thing. But they're on the verge of being at war with NATO here. U.S. shift allowing Ukraine to hit Russian soil with long-range weapons draws warning from Moscow. And so again, Biden shouldn't be doing anything. You've been judged as being senile. Of course, he's not doing this. This is his this war hawk neocons that he had to make a deal with to oust Trump. These Republican neocons who also have had a hard-on for the Ukraine and a hard-on to have World War III with Russia for whatever reason. And so they're going to be out of power as soon as Trump comes in. And so this is one last-ditch effort to lure Russia and the Iran into some kind of World War III situation. And then Trump would inherit that, which would be a mess. We'll see how that all plays out. I wanted to do an Alex Jones update, but he has just this live feed going on with Trump. I don't know if Trump is giving a speech somewhere on his all of his posts here, but he has this. It says cool art. I showed you this Illuminati, where the Illuminati were. When Alex Jones admits that his family were part of the Illuminati. But here it is, the people, we're the eye of infinite truth. Now, Alex Jones got his start by, there's nothing wrong with owls, but there's a thing with owls, and Native American people have, this, fear of owls. I mean, some of them, not all of them, some of these tribes. There's this idea that owls show up when UFOs do. Owls are a different creature. But in terms of Alex Jones, he got his start by being led into the Bohemian Grove and doing a live broadcast from there. They said he snuck in, but there's presidents there. There's the Bush family. There was, elite people there, and they had heavy security. But somehow he snuck in and videotaped this mock sacrifice, the cremation of Care, right? Where they do this mock sacrifice of Care, who was a baby, your conscience, in front of a giant owl that he called Moloch, but it's not Moloch because Moloch's a bull or whatever. But anyways, this giant owl that's in Bohemian Grove, and Alex Jones talking about the occult, and then later out coming out and saying that his family was long part of the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons and the Illuminati. And, and then here he is with these owls, and he thinks this is cool art. And it's posted by Illuminati Coin. X is the voice of the people, and they have these owls. And so, this is more of the fraud, the auction thing. I want to see how this ends up, whether Youngin buys this or not. I have mild interest in this. But, everything is such a farce, and these people are all shills and players in the whole thing. I just want to say one more thing about Alex Jones. Alex Jones, I've said this before, that the right-wing people push fear, and the fear becomes anger. And the left-wing people push anger, which becomes fear, right? They both traffic in anger and fear. But if you're a truth-telling person, and you're also somebody who believes in God, because God, someone who's a person who says that they have some sort of relationship with God and belief in God and have a faith-based attitude towards life. It lists some of that, right? And then you're, you believe there's a plan, that there is some divine force out there that's sort of controlling things, and, it's a part of, something, right? And that a divine system would right itself. And, anybody in the truth community that uses fear, like Alex Jones is of course, he's just a piece of shit shill, so, whatever. But his fear-mongering is just a real problem because it's the opposite of what needs to be done within the people who are so-called awakened, right? Because if you're waking up and seeing what's going on, and like I said, this is a huge problem in the truth community, at some point you have to accept that it's over and we're fucked. At least you can have that idea. Like, you don't have to be running out into the woods and quitting your job and like people do. Like, I should say that every once in a while because, people get crazy and do crazy shit, which again is a fear-based reaction. But you can at least prepare yourself what's going to happen. That's the whole idea behind Pockets of the Future, with some sense that there's, divine forces at play here. Like, no matter what's happening in the world, if you believe in God, then there is divine forces that are trying to right the ship. There's a plan, there's contingencies, that it isn't some, God didn't fuck up by giving people the freedom of choice without some contingencies or plans in case people started misusing their freedom of choice. Like, it's not like people are scamming God and the universe in some way by, behaving in a way that goes against the divine principles. That there be people, the devil, like in the Christian view of the, some evil being and things. And again, all the things that are in the Bible are simplified for simple people and sometimes distorted to deceive people. But this idea that there would be people and beings that would just go and be anti-God and would try to undo the system, would try to, for whatever reason, think they knew better and try to, take over the divine system in some way or another, exploit it. And that there would be some, like I said, contingencies to prevent that from happening. And so if you have that attitude and you see that we are what we all deserve this to some extent, if not now in a past existence, but all of us have contributed to this system in some way. We've been compromised. We've been, we've bought and sold into the system. We've allowed to participate in it. And even after waking up, we're not trying to right the wrongs that have been done by certainly Americans could think about all the wrongs that have been done in our name and try to right these wrongs. Again, I'm not advising that, or I don't advise anything, but it's unrealistic, and we've all been wronged, at least on a spiritual level, if not a material level, right? And we've been wronged on a material level. It's kept us away from living natural lives, and we've all suffered because of the system in some way or another. But anyways, this fear-mongering is one of the worst things. It's the opposite of being a truther. Of course, Alex Jones isn't a truther, but he's been a plague, a cancer, using the fear-mongering, acting as performance art shit, and it's all self-promotional stuff, and he's just brought things down to a low level. And we talk about WWE kind of performative stuff that he does. And then Trump doing that same thing. They have been a curse on humanity by bringing it down to a lower vibrational level and appealing to people's base fears and base angers. The Democrats, of course, do that as well, but they're not claiming to be the people, they're the people of science and the people who are, denying often the existence of a plan and a divinity and all these other things. And so not that I'm saying one's worse than the other, but they certainly aren't the good guys, right? The Democrats, the Republicans and Trump and Alex Jones and these people, they're, a huge part of the problem because they're taking a possible solution, a pathway to a solution as you start waking up to the system, and they are bringing it down to a low level of vibrations and consciousness and preventing people from, reaching up to. So I just got a few more things to get to. Bill Clinton opens up about apologizing to Monica Lewinsky. I live with it all the time. Bill Clinton's memoir, Citizen: My Life in the White House, is out next week. Who's going to buy a Bill Clinton book at this point? Like, is there people who really want to read about Bill Clinton and his illicit liaisons? And he admits he never apologized directly to Monica Lewinsky. He's only 78. He's younger than Trump and or Biden, but he looks older than either one of them. This guy, remember? And then Sharon Osbourne, 32, sparks surgery fears with taut visage 3 years after Cyclops facelift. So this is what her face looks like now, right? I mean, like I always say, it doesn't work. Like, just stop. Like, just, you don't look like a human being. You're getting rid of you're getting rid of your wrinkles, but that doesn't make you look young. It makes you look not human, and everyone sees it. Maybe some of these smaller surgeries, a little bit of some of the Botox can actually work a little bit, but you're never going to stop with that. Like the minor ones, because you're like, oh, this worked, and I could even look younger, and things are going to start showing up, and every time you get a wrinkle, you think you have a solution. And Botox, I mean, it's paralyzing nerves in your face and things. It's not it's a toxin. And so, I mean, this is that. So this is a wonderful moment from Drew Barrymore's show.
What makes me soft and gooey? Soft and gooey.
Yeah,
Treatment.
Soft and gooey treatment.
Yes.
When you're treated like a lady.
Nice. It's nice.
Someone comes in and...
You're the wrong gender.
I know.
What do you mean, why did you do that? That was just so weird. Holy shit, like... I know, I'm so disappointed that she can't be with this 90-year-old woman. Like, just stop, right? Just everybody just stop it. Like, knock it off. Knock it off right now. Okay, just a little update here. I want to wrap this video up. Today's, Monday, November 18th. And, these videos this won't be out till Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, I'm making too much content here. I got to figure out another way. Maybe I'll start posting videos, some of my videos on my other channel. And just every other day I'll post a video there. I thinking back to it, I probably should have done that with the, I did a bonus video for the whatever that director's name is, M. Night Shyamalan's crappy movie, The Trap. And so I just posted that, and it could have went on my backup channel, my other channel. And so I think I'll probably start posting things there. I'll talk about that maybe in the beginning of some video. That I'll be posting these things every other day. It still doesn't matter. It's the same amount of content, right? People just can't watch this much content. I just need to take more time off, and because I'm like putting the content together days in advance and having to wait to put it up, and the news is changing and breaking and things like this, which it is what it is. But I turned on the news today, and Pete Hegseth, paid accuser but denies sexual assault, attorney says. And I guess this is the beginning. Let's watch a little bit of this here.
Steve, update us on what we know about these new details involving Pete Hegseth, Trump's pick for a U.S. Defense Secretary.
Yeah, this is an incident that first came to light in the days after Trump nominated Hegseth to become his defense secretary, after a very quick period where he was considering other names and suddenly pivoted to Hegseth. And here's what we are learning from Hegseth's attorney. His attorney said that Hegseth paid a woman who accused him of sexual assault in a settlement agreement that also included a confidentiality clause. Now, this is all dating back to an October 2017 incident, which his lawyer describes as, quote, a consensual sexual encounter. Now, they are also pointing out, and we should point out ourselves, that he was not charged. The city of Monterey, California, where this took place, will not be releasing the full report at this time. We did try to reach out to the victim in this case, and she declined to be interviewed, partially because she was not sure what she was allowed to authorize to say.
Okay, so if he paid her off and he didn't do anything, that's the same kind of bullshit Trump tried to lay on people. Why would he pay Stormy Daniels $160,000 if he didn't fuck her, right? Or he didn't do anything with her? That's just silly. Like, he paid her $160,000 through a fixer, attorney, and a guy he's now turned on, and the guy's turned on him, and a scumbag fixer lawyer, and Michael Cohen, who said he was going to move out of the United States if Trump won all these things, right? And Trump keeps on doing this. Matt Gaetz, and we know that Jeffrey Epstein, and of course they've released those interviews with him before the election, and he talked about Trump encouraging some married man to cheat on his wife with some of Jeffrey Epstein's skanks and some of these things. I mean, that was just a little bit I heard that Jeffrey Epstein was talking about Trump, right? And Trump is that guy because he's just surrounded himself with all these, these beauty contests. He purchased these beauty contests like Miss USA or whatever it is, and some of these other things that he did. And he's got all these women, all this, scumbaggery surrounding him. And he's got two guys now who have been accused of sexual assault. And the right wing will say, well, that's just the Democrats and the liberal media going after Trump and his people, and it's all lies, but isn't lies. Trump is a scumbag, and he did these things, and he hangs out with people like this. And pretty much all these guys who are powerful politicians, they're involved in some scummy thing in one way or another, whether it's business deals or some sexually inappropriate things that they've done or whatever. It's just always that way because it's people who seek power. They always have these depraved appetites, and if not, they're just criminal and they're materialistic. I mean, if you're going to steal money and you're going to sell your soul, what do you think you're going to move that? What do you think you're going to use that money for? To give to charity? You're a self-indulgent person who likes to, indulge in whatever it is, right? Some kind of, usually it's going to be some sort of depravity, and so that's why people in Hollywood and all these people, these wealthy people, they dive into the depths of poor human behavior. Some kind of addiction, drugs, alcohol, sex, these things, addictive and sensory stimulation and whatever it is. And we see it time and time again. People with wealth and power, this is where they always end up. And so he's nominated two people that there's going to be scandals around already. The RFK thing is going to be hard to be passed through. I don't think he really intends with RFK becoming the health secretary because he's munching down on McDonald's food and saying he wants to make America healthy again. I mean, the mixed message is there because Trump's a lying piece of shit, right? Anyways, this story is still developing because apparently there's more victims out there. I think I saw it on one channel, and I'll, if that pops up, I'll if I find that, I'll put that in my next video. But I'm going to wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely born for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.